Imagine a sacred treasure, lost beneath the waves for centuries, a fragile, ancient page of the Quran, surviving storms, salt, and time itself, resting quietly on the seabed of the South China Sea. What if this forgotten fragment could rewrite our understanding of history, faith, and the unbreakable promise that Allah Himself protects His word? Join us as we dive deep into a mystery that bridges oceans, cultures, and centuries, a story of survival, discovery, and divine preservation. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings be upon you. Brothers and sisters, allow me to take you on a journey, not across land, but beneath the vast, silent depths of the sea, into a world long forgotten, yet suddenly awakened by a discovery so mysterious it shakes the foundations of what we know about Islamic history, preservation, and the divine promise behind the Holy Quran. Imagine this. Beneath the shifting sands of the South China Sea, a region known more for its modern-day tensions than for ancient relics, an archaeological expedition uncovers something no one ever expected to find. Not gold, not porcelain, not even weaponry, but a small chest sealed by the hands of time, buried under layers of silt and silence. And inside that chest, fragments of an ancient Quranic manuscript written in a script older than most modern nations, on material no longer common in our time. Faint golden ink, faded Arabic letters, folded pieces of vellum that once echoed the voices of devotion and perhaps survival. Is this fiction, or is it possible that such a relic could exist? In this video, we will journey through that very question, not just to satisfy historical curiosity, but to uncover the deeper meaning behind such a hypothetical yet profoundly symbolic discovery. Because this isn't just about a relic, it's about a story, the story of how the Quran, the Word of God, travels not just through time, but across empires and even beneath oceans.
We'll begin by setting the historical stage, looking at how Islam spread across Asia through maritime trade routes, not just through swords or scholars, but through sails, ships, and seafarers. We'll uncover how Muslim traders might have carried not only silk and spices, but also sacred scripture, fragile yet divinely guarded, as part of their spiritual identity and cultural connection. Then, we'll explore a fictionalized account, crafted from historical plausibility and archaeological technique, a tale where science meets faith. We'll follow a team of deep-sea researchers, international in their expertise, as they stumble upon an anomaly on the seabed and begin to unearth not just wood and metal, but a potential miracle. As we move forward, you'll also hear from the voice of science, from manuscript conservationists to paleographers, from chemical analysts to Quranic scholars. We'll learn how ancient texts are authenticated, preserved, and studied, and how this particular discovery might align with or challenge what we already know about Islamic history in East Asia. And finally, we'll reflect on something deeper, the spiritual resonance of such a find. For even if this story exists in the borderland between truth and speculation, it awakens a powerful question in our hearts. What does it mean when Allah says, "Indeed, it is we who sent down the Quran, and indeed we will be its guardian"? Surah Al-Hijr, verse 9. Can a soaked ancient manuscript hidden from the eyes of men for centuries be one of the ways that divine guardianship manifests? Let this story open not just your eyes, but your heart. Let it connect you to the enduring legacy of Islam, not just in mosques and libraries, but in the depths of the ocean, where no one thought the Quran could reach, let alone survive. So, Bismillah. Prepare yourself. We set sail now across centuries and seas to follow the forgotten trail of the sacred manuscript.
Historical background: Islam and the maritime roots of East Asia. As we begin to uncover the potential story of a Quranic manuscript hidden beneath the waves, we must first ask, how could a sacred text of Islam find its way to the depths of the South China Sea? To answer that, we must travel back more than 1,000 years to an age when the world was not yet divided by national borders and flags, but connected by trade winds, saltwater currents, and the rhythm of wooden ships creaking against the tides. The spread of Islam by land and sea. After the passing of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in the 7th century, Islam began its incredible spread outward from the Arabian Peninsula. The message of Tawheed, the oneness of God, traveled swiftly across deserts and river valleys through the efforts of companions, scholars, generals, and traders alike. While much attention is given to Islam's expansion by land, the famous Silk Road, stretching across Central Asia into Persia, India, and eventually China, the maritime routes played an equally crucial, though often underappreciated, role in the shaping of Islamic civilization. From the ports of Oman and Yemen, early Muslim sailors set their sails eastward, navigating the vast Indian Ocean. These maritime adventurers, many of them traders, some Sufi mystics, others simple laborers seeking livelihood, carried more than goods. They carried culture, language, and faith. Their dhows, those graceful, wind-catching ships of the Arabian Sea, made regular stops along a glittering chain of ports. Gujarat and Malabar in India, Aceh and Palembang in Sumatra, Malacca and the Riau Archipelago, Patani and Champa, and further still to Guangzhou, Quanzhou, and even Hangzhou in what is today southern China. Through these routes, Islam slowly took root in communities scattered across Southeast Asia and the southern coasts of China. Not through force, but through trust, through the honest dealings of Muslim merchants, through marriages with local women, through the calm wisdom of Sufi teachers who spoke not only Arabic, but the language of the heart. The sea, in this sense, was not a barrier, but a bridge.
B. Muslim traders and sacred manuscripts. And what did these travelers bring with them? Silk, yes. Spices, certainly. Porcelain, undoubtedly. But they also brought with them fragments of the sacred. It was common for devout Muslim merchants to carry small personal mushafs, handwritten Qur'ans, or even single surahs transcribed on parchment or thin leather to guide them in prayer during long voyages. For many, the Qur'an was not simply a book to be read. It was a companion, a protector, a link to home and heaven. Some of these manuscripts were gifts presented to new converts or local leaders as symbols of unity in faith. Others were instructional, used to teach the basic principles of Islam to newly formed communities along the coasts. And in rare cases, they were objects of beauty, written in fine calligraphy, using natural inks made from saffron, carbon, or crushed gold. Imagine for a moment a young sailor from Yemen crouched on the deck of a ship beneath the stars, tracing the words of Surah Al-Fatiha with his finger by the light of an oil lamp. Or a Sufi master teaching the letters of the Arabic alphabet to children in a fishing village in Champa, using a Quranic fragment as his only tool. Now, imagine such a manuscript being sealed in a box for safekeeping during a storm, only for the ship to vanish, its cargo swallowed by the sea. C. The Belle-Yutong shipwreck, a real precedent. This brings us to an important historical anchor point, the Belle-Yutong shipwreck, also known as the Tong shipwreck, discovered in 1998 off the coast of Belle-Yutong Island in Indonesia. The ship, a 9th-century Arab dhow, was en route from China to the Abbasid Caliphate when it sank in the Java Sea. Its cargo included tens of thousands of Chinese ceramics, gold vessels, and intricately designed silverware. The ship itself, of Arab design, proved that Muslim merchants were deeply engaged in maritime trade with China as early as the 800s CE. Although no Quranic manuscripts were recovered from the wreck, the discovery confirmed beyond doubt that Arab Muslim ships traveled these waters, that they carried not only commercial goods but objects of art and potentially spiritual value. It also suggested that these ships did not hug the coastlines, but ventured boldly into the open sea, navigating dangerous monsoon currents and risking everything for the promise of connection and perhaps dawah. In this context, the idea of a Quran fragment lost at sea no longer seems far-fetched, but a plausible reality waiting to be uncovered by time and technology.
D. A fragile journey across hostile waters. We must remember, however, that the ocean is not kind to the delicate. A manuscript, even one written on durable parchment, would face immense odds: saltwater corrosion, marine bacteria, crushing pressures, and the slow grind of sand and sediment. And yet, history surprises us. There are recorded instances of manuscripts surviving centuries in caves, deserts, and ruins, hidden, forgotten, protected by chance or providence. In such cases, the environment that would normally destroy instead becomes a preserver: low oxygen, stable temperature, or isolation from human interference. Could a sealed, waterproof chest aboard a sunken ship have done the same? Could nature, in its own mysterious way, have become the guardian of the words of God? E. Faith and the forgotten currents. As we look back at the historical tapestry woven across the maritime routes of East Asia, we begin to see that the possibility of a Quranic manuscript being lost and later found beneath the sea is more than romantic fiction. It is a reflection of something deeper: that the story of Islam is not confined to deserts and domes, but also exists in forgotten harbors, submerged routes, and the hearts of those who traveled in faith across uncharted waters. And now, having set our historical compass, we are ready to dive into the next chapter, a creative reconstruction of how such a miraculous find could happen, a story grounded in archaeology and enriched with imagination. So join us as we descend into the sea where faith and mystery meet.
The Discovery Story. Creative fiction meets historical hypothesis, somewhere in the South China Sea. The water was calm that morning, but beneath the surface, a mystery had waited more than 1,000 years to be found. After months of preparation, sonar mapping, and seabed scanning, a multinational maritime archaeology team comprised of researchers from China, Turkey, Indonesia, and Germany was finally ready to begin their descent. Their objective?
a long-lost wooden wreckage believed to be a medieval trading vessel lying silently beneath 120 meters of water. Dr. Liang Min, lead marine archaeologist from Beijing Maritime Institute, stood aboard the research vessel Haiyan IV, staring at the digital display of the ROV, remotely operated vehicle. The screen pulsed with sonar echoes, revealing the ghostly shape of a hull, warped, fractured, but unmistakably a ship. "Confirmed," she said into the mic, initiating visual feed. The ROV plunged, its high-powered lights slicing through darkness. The world below turned from pitch black to deep blue, then to silt gray as the drone neared the seabed. Swaying corals and scattered pottery fragments hinted that the team was not the first to disturb these depths, but they might be the first to truly understand what lay beneath. And then they saw it. The fragmented ribs of a ship's hull, encrusted with barnacles, half buried in the sand. Broken amphora, bronze tools, ceramic shards, and beside it something strange, a small corroded metal chest, half swallowed by sediment. The chest. "No way," whispered Alexei, the Russian-born technician, his eyes locked on the monitor. "That's too intact. Could be recent." But Dr. Liang shook her head. "No, that's not modern ironwork. It's hammered, riveted. Could be 13th, maybe 14th century. Get it topside." The team watched breathlessly as the ROV extended its mechanical arms and gently began dislodging the chest from the seabed. The silt clouded, then cleared. Carefully, the chest was lifted into the cargo bay of the submersible recovery module. Within 2 hours, the box was on deck, encrusted in salt, rusted along the hinges, but still sealed. They moved it into a humidity-controlled chamber on board. "Let's open it slowly," said Dr. Liang. The hinges groaned. Seawater hissed. Inside lay something no one had expected. A bundle of folded animal skin parchment. Faintly golden ink shimmered under the light. The calligraphy was Arabic. They stared in silence.
"Are we seeing what I think we're seeing?" whispered Professor Yusuf Al-Khouri, a paleography expert from Istanbul University, brought in to help catalog Arabic inscriptions. He reached out gently, his gloved fingers brushing the edge of the parchment. "Bismillah," he murmured. Initial analysis, wonder meets skepticism. The fragment was brittle, the ink nearly invisible to the naked eye. But under multispectral imaging, the words bloomed with clarity. Surah fragments, written in early Arabic script. No dots, no vowel marks. Likely 9th to 13th century, a style somewhere between Hijazi and early Sino-Arabic Naskh. The lab lit up with debate. Was it part of a mushaf, a travel fragment, a teaching aid? And more importantly, was it real? Skepticism erupted. "It could be a forgery, planted by looters," said Dr. Marcus Gartner, a cautious voice from Berlin. "Impossible," countered Yusuf. "You saw the layers. This manuscript's been sealed for centuries. No modern pigment, no modern disturbance. Look at the ink degradation. This is authentic." A fragment of Surah Ar-Rahman was tentatively identified. Another 9 appeared to come from Surah Al-Qasas. Even in its damaged form, the manuscript bore the unmistakable rhythm of the Qur'an. "I need to say something," Yusuf said quietly, the room falling silent. "If this is real, then this manuscript has been under the sea for 700 years or more, and somehow it survived." A long pause. And if it survived, he added, voice low with awe, then this is not just a discovery, it's something else.
Scientific procedure. Preservation begins. Immediately, the team followed established protocol for ancient manuscript recovery. First step, controlled rehydration. The parchment was stabilized in a bath of distilled water mixed with ethanol to draw out salt without triggering rapid decay. Second step, temperature and humidity lockdown. The fragments were moved to a mobile isolation chamber where the temperature was held steady at 18 degrees Celsius with humidity at 55%. Too dry and the parchment would crack. Too moist and it would mold. Third step, UV and infrared imaging. Multispectral analysis allowed experts to identify hidden text, ink composition, and page layout. Under UV light, faded calligraphy glowed thin lines of gold leaf ink that shimmered like a galaxy trapped on skin. Fourth step, digital reconstruction. Every square millimeter was photographed and digitally reconstructed. An AI algorithm trained on classical Quranic manuscripts was used to predict missing characters and reconstruct possible surahs. The more they studied it, the more certain they became. This was not just Arabic writing, it was Quranic scripture, and likely one of the oldest ever discovered in East Asia's maritime context. Theories and hypotheses. How did it get there? Several theories emerged. A merchant vessel, a Muslim trader from Arabia or the Malay world carrying religious texts as part of his cargo, either for personal devotion, for daqwa, or as a gift for a Muslim community in South China. A Sufi mission. Sufi travelers often carried small mushafs for teaching and recitation. The manuscript could have belonged to a spiritual teacher heading for the Muslim communities in South China.
A diplomatic exchange. In certain cases, Islamic manuscripts were gifted during royal exchanges. Could this have been part of such a diplomatic journey gone awry? Whatever the theory, one truth remained. The manuscript had survived against all odds. Salt, time, pressure, neglect, obscurity. And yet the verses still spoke. Indeed, we sent down the reminder, and we will surely preserve it. Surah Al-Hijr, verse 9. At this moment, the story shifted. What began as an archaeological dig had become a spiritual inquiry. What began as a mystery beneath the sea had become a sign. But to truly understand its meaning, to authenticate it beyond doubt, the team would now turn to the next stage, the deep scholarly analysis of script, ink, and parchment. The alignment of this relic with known Islamic manuscripts across Asia, and the reflection on what it all means for history, for faith, and for us today. Manuscript analysis, authenticity, style, and the echoes of divine preservation. The deck of the Hayyan VI was calm, but in the mobile laboratory, a storm of thought had begun. The team stood around the sealed chamber where the manuscript fragments were undergoing a stabilization protocol. It was a scene unlike any archaeological operation before, not just because of what they had found, but because of what it might represent. Was it real? How old was it? Where did it come from? And could it truly be a Quranic manuscript, untouched by human hands for over 7 centuries, resting in the darkness of the sea, preserved against all natural odds?
To answer these questions, the team now turned to the silent witness itself, the manuscript. A. Paleographic study, reading the script of time. The first step was to analyze the writing, the calligraphy, the formation of letters, the layout, and the stylistic features. In the world of ancient manuscripts, even a single curve of a letter can locate a text in space and time. Professor Yusuf Al-Khoury led the effort. Under his magnifier, he traced each faded line with reverence. What emerged was a style unlike the decorative, fluid calligraphy we often see in modern Qur'ans. This was something older, stricter, more angular. The letters stood upright, strong, unadorned. This isn't Maghribi or Ottoman, he noted. This is pre-Naskh, possibly early Kufic, but with hybrid features. The script had no dots, nukat, and no vowel markings, harakat, a common feature in Quranic manuscripts before the 10th century. That alone was significant. It suggested a time when reciters memorized the Quran not through reading alone, but through oral tradition. The text required not only sight, but sound and heart. But there was something else. In the corner of one fragment, barely legible under infrared scan, was a faint red diacritical mark. This was not merely utilitarian script, it carried hints of regional adaptation. Yusuf leaned back, eyes wide. He said, "This looks like a transitional script, possibly influenced by Sino-Islamic styles." He explained that by the 13th and 14th centuries, Muslim communities in China had begun to produce their own Quranic manuscripts, still in Arabic, but influenced by Chinese brush calligraphy. The paper was different, the ink was lighter, the lines more compressed. The script often appeared restrained, minimalistic, in harmony with East Asian artistic philosophy. Could it be, then, that this fragment originated from or was destined for one of those very communities?
B. Ink and material analysis. Science meets the sacred. While paleographers studied the calligraphy, material scientists began their own work, less romantic perhaps, but just as critical. Samples were taken, microscopic to avoid damage, and run through several forms of analysis. Raman spectroscopy to determine ink composition, carbon-14 dating to assess the age of the parchment, protein analysis to identify the type of animal skin used. The results were remarkable. The ink was carbon-based, derived from lampblack mixed with natural binders, a common formula before synthetic dyes. But traces of saffron and iron gall suggested decorative elements, perhaps intended to highlight divine names or chapter headings. The parchment was not paper, but vellum, processed from calf or goatskin, tougher, more durable than paper, and used for texts of significant importance. The dating placed the fragment's origin between 1260 to 1350 CE, with a confidence interval of 92%. A period aligned with the late Song to early Yuan dynasty in China, a time when maritime trade between the Islamic world and China flourished. The protein analysis indicated the parchment was of Central Asian livestock origin, not native to southern China. That meant it was brought into the region likely through maritime or overland trade. Everything points to a manuscript that originated within the greater Islamic world, said Dr. Liang. But its destination? Most likely Southeast Asia or coastal China. C. Comparisons with known manuscripts. To strengthen the case, the team began comparing their find to known Quranic manuscripts from around the Islamic world. One manuscript stood out, the Qur'an Quran, housed in the Qizi Mosque in Shanghai, China. Estimated to date between the 8th and 13th centuries, it consists of 867 pages, written on traditional Chinese paper, preserved in stable temperature and humidity conditions. Like the seabed manuscript, the Qizi Quran lacks dots and vowels in many passages. Both use narrow lines and compressed spacing. The ink tones, when matched through digital imaging, showed similar degradation curves, a sign of shared composition or climate exposure. Another comparison was made with the Samarkand Kufic manuscript and early Southeast Asian Quranic fragments found in Aceh and Kelantan. In each case, the seabed manuscript shared enough features to suggest authenticity, but also possessed unique traits that made it stand apart, especially its likely preservation in sealed containment, rare for any manuscript, let alone one lost at sea.
D. A spiritual perspective. Signs in the sea. Eventually, the analysis reached a point where data gave way to reflection. The scientists had done their work. The historians had traced the past. The materials had been measured, the letters dated, the ink decoded. And yet, a deeper question remained. Why did this survive? In a sealed box, aboard a sunken ship, through centuries of corrosion and biological decay, the words of Allah had endured. Dr. Yusuf, usually reserved, spoke quietly to the group gathered around the preservation chamber. We spend our lives studying how books are made, how words fade, how ink breaks down. But maybe this one survived not because of the chest, not because of the salt levels or the oxygen balance, but because it was never just a manuscript. He opened his weathered notebook and recited aloud the verse he had written on its first page. Indeed, we have sent down the reminder, and indeed we will be its guardian. Surah Al-Hijr 15:9. Silence fell over the room. For centuries, Muslims have believed in the divine preservation of the Quran, not only in memorization, not only in physical transmission, but in ways that defy logic. This fragment, even if damaged and incomplete, was perhaps a symbol of that divine promise, a verse that lay dormant beneath waves and time, awaiting rediscovery, not as proof for skeptics, but as a reminder for the faithful. And so, with authenticity confirmed to the highest reasonable degree, the team began the next stage, to prepare the manuscript for transfer to a conservation laboratory, where it would be preserved, displayed, and perhaps one day read again not only by scholars, but by seekers. Seekers of knowledge, seekers of meaning, seekers of signs.
Preservation, display, and the return to light. After weeks aboard the research vessel, the Quranic fragments were no longer just archaeological material. They had become a subject of spiritual reverence, scientific curiosity, and global attention. And so, with all initial documentation complete, the team began the most delicate phase yet, preparing the manuscript for long-term conservation. This was not merely about keeping a relic. This was about honoring it, about safeguarding something that had defied time, nature, and human neglect. A. Transfer to the preservation lab. The fragments were placed in a climate-controlled, vibration-resistant transport case, the kind typically used for Renaissance art or space-grade electronics. Inside, they lay nestled in non-reactive foam, monitored by microsensors that tracked humidity, temperature, and air quality in real time. Destination: the International Center for Manuscript Conservation, a high-security facility jointly operated by heritage organizations in China, Turkey, and UNESCO. Upon arrival, the team was met by conservators dressed not in sterile lab coats, but in garments that reflected cultural and religious respect. Gloves were worn, shoes removed. No artificial light touched the manuscript directly. There, behind sealed glass, the process resumed. B. The science of saving the sacred. 1. Slow drying process. The fragments were first subjected to a gradual dehumidification process to extract trapped salt and moisture without causing warping or cracking. A misstep here could irreparably damage the parchment. Over 21 days, the temperature was slowly increased from 15 degrees Celsius to 20 degrees Celsius, and relative humidity was lowered by 1% every 48 hours. 2. Surface cleaning. Using microsuction tools and soft brushes made from squirrel hair, conservators removed centuries of marine residue, sand particles, and fungal spores. Each speck of dust was examined under a microscope to determine whether it held pigment fragments. Nothing was discarded without analysis. 3. Stabilization and mounting. The parchment was laid flat between layers of Japanese mulberry paper, breathable, pH-neutral, and flexible, and lightly pressed between weighted sheets to reduce curvature. 4. Encapsulation. Once stabilized, the fragments were placed inside low-iron UV protective glass enclosures, filled with inert argon gas. This created a miniature microclimate where light, temperature, and oxygen levels could be precisely controlled.
C. The exhibition, returning to the world. Months later, the world would see it for the first time. The unveiling was held not in the political capital, but in a quiet city with deep Islamic roots, Xi'an, China, once a terminus of the Silk Road and home to one of the oldest Muslim communities in East Asia. The manuscript fragment was displayed under dim lighting. A projected image hovered behind the case, digitally reconstructing the lost verses using AI-informed fill-ins, but carefully marked to distinguish original text from digital inference. A QR code led visitors to a high-resolution online archive where they could zoom in, study the script, even listen to recitations of the verses identified. Alongside the display were interactive panels telling the story of the ship that never made it to shore, of the chest that kept its secret sealed, of the ink that refused to fade, and of the promise, indeed, we will preserve it. Visitors from across the world wept softly, not at the artifact, but at what it represented: survival, resilience, memory, divine protection. D. A legacy preserved, not possessed. The global academic community, once skeptical, now spoke with reverence. Journals published papers not only in archaeology and Islamic studies, but also in comparative religion, environmental science, and manuscript ethics. A debate emerged. Should the manuscript remain in China? Should it return to the Muslim world? But scholars, imams, and heritage leaders eventually agree. This is not a national treasure. It is a global amana, a trust for all humanity. A digital twin of the manuscript was donated to Al-Azhar in Egypt. the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, and the National Library of Malaysia. A portion was even recited during a Friday khutbah at the Niji Mosque in Beijing, the same verses identified from the fragment. It was no longer a relic, it had become a voice again. E. Symbolism, light emerging from the deep. The manuscript's journey from ink to ocean to exhibition became a metaphor in itself. Teachers used it to remind students that truth, though buried, never dies. Imams referenced it as a sign that Islam reached where few had imagined. Conservationists hailed it as proof of what could be preserved with care, patience, and respect. The metaphor grew. A chest in the dark became a lamp on the hill. A script once silenced, now whispered again. What man forgot, Allah did not. And as thousands passed by the exhibition, a small plaque carried just one verse engraved in Arabic, English, and Mandarin. Indeed, it is a mighty book. Falsehood cannot approach it neither from before it nor behind it. It is a revelation from the one most wise, most praiseworthy. At one time a symbol of persecution, now a testament to eternal faith.
Spiritual and historical reflections, signs beyond the surface. The delicate pages, once hidden beneath layers of sediment and salt water, had surfaced into the light, but their meaning reached far beyond their physical form. This discovery was not just about ancient ink and vellum. It was about history, faith, identity, and hope. A. Evidence of Islam's maritime reach and Asian ties. For centuries, historians have known that Islam spread not only over deserts and mountains, but also across oceans. This manuscript reinforced that truth, a tangible link to the maritime Silk Roads that connected the Islamic heartlands with East Asia and Southeast Asia. Through the ages, Muslim traders sailed the Indian Ocean, carrying goods like spices, textiles, and precious metals, but also ideas, beliefs, and sacred texts. Ports from Aden to Malacca, Guangzhou to Zanzibar became melting pots of cultures, languages, and faiths. Manuscripts like this fragment testify that the Quran was not confined to deserts or cities alone. It journeyed across the waves, embedding itself in distant communities. The find encouraged scholars to rethink traditional maps of Islamic influence, highlighting the oceans as arteries of spiritual and cultural exchange, not just commerce.
B. Inspiration and Daqwa, the Quran's endurance as a beacon. The discovery inspired many Muslim communities around the world. In an age when the Quran is available digitally, printed in millions of copies, the idea that an ancient manuscript could survive such harsh conditions was deeply moving. It served as a powerful reminder that the Quran is preserved by divine will, transcending human frailty and the ravages of time. That faith can endure through adversity, even when seemingly lost beneath the waves. That the sacred text remains a beacon of guidance and hope, no matter where or how it is found. In many mosques, sermons began to incorporate the story as a source of spiritual encouragement. Imams emphasized that Allah's promise to protect the Quran, QS Al-Hijr 9, is not just theoretical, it is manifest in ways that may surprise and humble believers. C. A message to the viewers, reflection, and responsibility. What could this story teach us all? First, that the Quran is not simply an ancient book to be stored away in museums or archives. It is a living guide meant to be read, understood, and cherished. Second, that history holds mysteries waiting to be uncovered, urging us to seek knowledge and embrace heritage, not just for pride, but for connection. Third, that every discovery, every fragment, is a reminder of the power of preservation, physical, cultural, and spiritual. Finally, this story calls us to action. Let us renew our love for the Quran and protect it in our hearts and communities. Let us honor the sacrifices of those who carried it across seas and deserts. Let us deepen our understanding of the vast, interconnected history of Islam, from the deserts of Arabia to the shores of China.
D. The greater context, Islam in Southeast Asia and beyond. The manuscript's journey mirrors the larger story of Islam's spread in Asia. Southeast Asia's vibrant Muslim communities, from Indonesia to Malaysia, have roots that trace back to traders and scholars who navigated these ancient waters. The discovery invites reflection on how these connections fostered not only commerce, but also education, art, and spiritual exchange. It challenges modern Muslims to explore their history, reconnect with traditions, and appreciate the diversity of Islamic expression shaped by centuries of cross-cultural contact. Final thoughts. The divine promise in every letter. As the sun set over Sion and visitors left the quiet exhibit, the manuscript remained protected, a testament to time, faith, and the unseen hand of divine care. In the fragile curls of the ancient script, believers see the truth of a timeless promise that the Quran is guarded by Allah Himself. This discovery, while extraordinary, is a gentle whisper to all humanity. What seems impossible to us is possible with Allah. What is hidden will be revealed in His time. In every letter, in every stroke of ink, the sacred text speaks again, reminding us that history and faith are entwined, that preservation is both a scientific endeavor and a spiritual trust.
Closing and prayer, gratitude and reflection. As we reach the end of this incredible journey from the depths of the South China Sea to the hushed halls of international conservation labs, and finally to the eyes and hearts of the world, it is time to pause and reflect. The story of the ancient Quranic manuscript is more than a tale of archaeology or history. It is a living testament to the power of faith, the resilience of culture, and the profound mercy of Allah. A reflection on divine protection. Throughout this narrative, we have seen signs of a greater truth, that the Quran, revealed over 1400 years ago, is not merely words on parchment. It is a sacred trust, promised to be preserved by the Almighty Himself. Surviving the ravages of time, water, and salt, this manuscript fragment becomes a symbol, a bridge between the past and the present, between human effort and divine will. It reminds us of the verse, "Indeed, it is we who sent down the Quran, and indeed we will be its guardian." QS Al-Hijr, verse 9. This promise is not just a statement of fact, but a source of comfort and inspiration for millions worldwide. B. Gratitude to those who made this possible. We owe thanks to the courageous and meticulous archaeologists who dove into the unknown depths, risking hardship to uncover this treasure. The scientists and conservators who treated the fragile fragments with care, blending ancient respect with modern technology. The historians, scholars, and imams who interpreted the find, connecting it to a larger spiritual and cultural tapestry. And finally, to you, the viewer and seeker, for your curiosity, your open heart, and your willingness to journey through history and faith alongside us. C. A prayer to close.
Let us end with a prayer seeking knowledge, protection, and divine guidance. Allahu inni asaluka, fahman nabiyyin wa hifdhil kitab, wa an taj'al al-Qur'an rahmatan lana wa nuran fi qulubina. O Allah, I ask you for the understanding of the prophets and the protection of the book. Make the Qur'an a mercy for us and a light in our hearts. May this story inspire us all to deepen our love for the Qur'an, to safeguard its teachings, and to continue seeking the light of knowledge wherever it may be found. Final words. Thank you for accompanying us on this extraordinary voyage beneath the waves and into the heart of history. If this story touched you, inspired you, or made you reflect, please share it so more hearts can be enlightened and more minds awakened. Until next time, may peace, mercy, and blessings be upon you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.